It's now time for question period. I recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, Speaker. Yesterday, in what could only be called a very Trumpian-style outburst, the Premier threatened to audit nonprofits and community organizations because they dared to speak out against his government. Meanwhile, the Premier stands here every single day defending his Minister of Labour's $2.5 billion grift, handing out taxpayer dollars to insiders and lobbyists while regular people just keep losing out. So my question to the Premier is, why won't the Premier show some respect to the taxpayers who pay his salary and hold the Minister of Labour accountable for this mess?
Recognize the Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I want to talk about what happened in this place earlier this week. And let's face it, what happened in this place was supported 100% by the Leader of the Opposition and actually members of her party.
Member for Waterloo will come to order.
Shameful that situation was enabled by members of the opposition. This is a place, Speaker, through you, for debating ideas. We were all sent here to do a job, and we should do it without stunts, tricks, and enabling radicals. Absolutely. And let's face it, it was an enabling of radicals in this chamber. Shame on the Leader of the Opposition. Shame on your caucus. Let's get back to debating the issues that are before us.
Well, Speaker, I won't take a lecture like that from that member whose own work as a minister is under criminal investigation by the RCMP. So please, come on. Look, the Premier and his ministers, they want to distract. But I want to bring the Premier's attention back to where we are at today because, Speaker, the Financial Accountability Office, they just reported that Ontario's manufacturing jobs have hit the lowest point since 1976. 1976. I was putting Sean Cassidy posters on my wall in 1976. I was a little young, but I was doing that. Donna Summers was teaching us how to disco in 1976, Speaker. This Premier is a jobs disaster. Instead of investing in training people for good jobs, the Premier continues to stand there every day and make excuses for his Minister of Labour, who turned that fund into a pay-to-play scheme. When will the Premier clean up this mess and fire his minister?
Back to the Government House Leader.
No, I'm not going to let the Leader shift off her original narrative, right? The Leader of the Opposition very clearly this week sided with professional protesters and to take a word from my Premier and my Leader, yahoos, rather than debating the issues in this House. Again, Speaker, we're going to make sure that we talk about what's important to Ontarians. And I know that the Minister of Labour, both today and every day, is committed to ensuring that young people have an opportunity to have a skilled trade, that we continue to put forward policies that are going to ensure that we are the leading jurisdiction in the G7. The Leader of the Opposition and her crew can continue to stand up with these protesters and yahoos. They can continue to collaborate them. It's this party and our government that's continued to stand up for young people, going to continue to stand up for unions. That's what we're...
Supplementary, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, with this government is always the same thing, right? We see it over and over again. We saw it with the Greenbelt scheme. Now we see it with pay to play. It is one set of rules for them, and then it's a whole other set of rules for everybody else, regular people, the rest of us. And I want to say, construction workers that I have just met just in the last couple of weeks are asking me how money went to strip clubs instead of apprenticeships because they don't have enough of them. Healthcare workers who are fighting for higher wages while their tax dollars, not your piggy bank, not your money, the people's money is going to the Premier's campaign manager.
I apologize to the Leader of the Opposition. I will ask the member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound to withdraw. Stand up and withdraw. Order. 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 I'll ask the member to withdraw.
Withdraw it.
And I will go back to the Leader of the Opposition for 10 seconds.
This morning, I was speaking to farmers here from all across Ontario who said to me over and over again, they thanked me for shining a light in the shadows of this government and this cabinet, because people have a right to know that their taxpayer dollars are going to programs that are going to benefit them, not this member's family and friends. So when will the Premier put an end to this scheme and finally fire his Minister of Labour?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, Speaker, it's important we don't mislead the public, Speaker. That member, if she's visited unions and union training centers, Speaker, I would ask her to name where she's visited, Speaker, for weeks.
I will ask the Minister withdraw.
Withdraw.
To withdraw.
Speaker, every member of this caucus show up in union training halls to support funding. We know, Speaker,
Order.
We know they're subject to robust accountability metrics. Just visit them at one of their membership meetings. They're subject to accountability metrics through our fund, Speaker, and we're investing in training centres. We're providing funding to support training in every corner of this province. We've seen an increase in the number of apprentices registering thanks to the work of this Premier. We're actually building. They're a professional protest party, Speaker, who don't want to build highways, don't want to build roads, don't want to build bridges. Those workers, again, I would ask her, which union did you visit? Because those unions have abandoned her party in favour of a Premier that's going to put their members to work.
Question, the Leader of the Opposition.
Sure, I'm not even gonna go there, because I got to tell you, I have been to so many training facilities, and not only that, I have sat on the side of workers for a union bargaining against the big corporate bosses that they represent. So give me a break. Honestly, give me a break. Look, the bare minimum that Ontarians should be able to expect from their government is the truth. They want to see honesty. They want to see integrity, the kind of integrity that workers in this province show every single day when they wake up in the morning and they go to work to earn a decent living. But this government, they are only concerned about their friends and their insiders while the rest of us fall behind. There are 200,000 more people unemployed today than there were when this government took office. That is a fact. People are looking for work and unable to find it because of this government's jobs disaster. So to the Premier, can he tell us exactly how many jobs, full-time jobs, this pay-to-play scheme created?
Back to the Minister of Labour.
Last month, Speaker, we saw over 56,000 jobs added to the Ontario economy, Speaker. When juxtaposed with the United States, Speaker, that's almost half of what the entire United States generated in the same time period, Speaker. This Premier is creating meaningful opportunities. Through the Skills Development Fund, 100,000 workers have received employment within 60 days or less. And what have we seen through investing in training halls in every corner of this province? We've seen a 33% increase in cement finishers. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition doesn't even know what a cement finisher is, Speaker. We've seen a 25% increase in heat and frost insulators, a 64% increase in pressure system welders. What do you need these professions for, Speaker? You need them to build a stronger Ontario, to build new nuclear plants, to build new homes, to build new hospitals. Each and every measure they vote against, Speaker.
The Leader of the Opposition.
It's pretty low, right? It's really sexist, and it's beneath a minister, I will say that. Yeah. But look, the numbers tell us a very different story. Because while the Premier stands here and he holds the line for his Minister of Labour, handing out millions to his buddies like the Paris groom and the strip club owner, workers are the ones that are falling through the cracks, and people out there are finding life more expensive every single day under your government. We now have 20,600 fewer jobs in the manufacturing sector alone, according to the Financial Accountability Office, Speaker. Manufacturing. a sector that used to be at the very heart of our economy. Fewer opportunities, more uncertainty. That is all that this government has to offer to workers in this province. So does the Premier honestly think that his pay-to-play scheme is going to fix his jobs disaster?
I recognize the member for the Bay of Quinte.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Opposition for the question. And let's get this straight. When our government came into office in 2018, there was 100,000 auto jobs that were hanging in the balance after the 300,000 manufacturing jobs that left under the previous government. We now have 800,000 jobs in this province in manufacturing, up 24,000 in the last 4 months alone. We have more manufacturing jobs than Florida and New York, and are third only in all of North America to California and Texas. We continue to be a manufacturing powerhouse, and we will continue to create good jobs and great opportunities for all the people in Ontario, and we will take no lessons from the NDP.
Not at all.
Final supplementary.
So there they go again, Speaker, patting themselves on the back while patting themselves on the back. Yeah, you like that?
Order.
Yeah, they really like it. They really like to applaud themselves. They really like to applaud themselves while hard-earned people are seeing their hard-earned dollars flowing out of this government and into the pockets of the strip club owners, of your friends and your campaign managers, and it's disgusting. Yeah. This year, we are seeing, again, I want to remind the member, go read the reports, we are seeing the first back-to-back quarterly job losses since 2009. Yeah. Just in the past 6 months. We've lost almost 40,000 jobs. I talked to the workers in Brampton, in Ingersoll, in Windsor, in Oshawa, all across this province, in Sault Ste. Marie. This government is a jobs disaster. When will the Premier stand up for workers and fire his Minister of Labour?
I recognize the member for the Bay of Quinte.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Opposition for the question. And this government has worked tirelessly to create the conditions for businesses to thrive.
Member for Waterloo will come to order.
We've cut the cost of doing business in Ontario by over $12 billion a year. And through our red tape reduction measures, we've saved businesses over 1.8 million hours and $1.2 billion a year. And that has led to the top foreign direct investment in the entire country, creating over 90,000 jobs through FDI between 2018 and 2023. And that's to say nothing about the $40 billion that we brought in just last year from 409 international companies, creating 23,711 jobs. We are continuing to drive innovation, growth, and job creation across this province, and once again, we will do that without the help of the opposition.
I recognize the Leader of the Third Party.
Much, Speaker, and my question is for the President of the Treasury Board. So I've asked maybe a dozen times now about why Keel Digital Solutions continued to receive tens of millions of dollars while they were under a forensic audit that's now been forwarded to the OPP for investigation. So, we still haven't got a response, but it's bigger than Keel. It's bigger than Keel, right? There's a bigger, broader question about the Skills Development Fund. So, through you, Speaker, to the President of the Treasury Board, what is the reason that the President of the Treasury Board refuses to take broader action in investigating the rot that is the Skills Development Fund?
Government House Leader.
Thanks, Speaker. Through you to the honourable member, I just want to take the member back. He's asked these questions over and over again. We've been very, very clear in this House about the path forward. The government outlined that in 2023 we had a routine audit that raised concerns about this external service provider. The process that the government went forward identified irregularities that ultimately led to a very comprehensive forensic audit on the organization that's in question. The results of the audit, which the government received on November the 5th, recommended that the matter be referred to the Ontario Provincial Police. And my colleague, the Minister of Colleges and Universities, Research, Excellence and Security, has said repeatedly in this House that within 24 hours of receiving that forensic report that the referral was made. So, you know, the member can continue to grandstand. I know he's the perennial leader of the opposition, and they're going through a bit of a thing with their...
Supplementary. I recognize the leader of the third party.
The government House leader missed the point. The clock started when that routine audit ended and it was identified, and you continued to send millions and millions of dollars. Why did that happen? You can't run a business that way. You go bankrupt. So we know that the Auditor General's report on the Skills Development Fund said it wasn't fair, transparent, or accountable, and that there was a perception of bias, and that it was hard to get any information about the fund. And we also know that the lowest scoring proposal got the most amount of money. And that just doesn't make any sense. Like, how does that happen? So it doesn't make any sense. Right? There's a process. There's a problem. You identify it. You stop sending money. You stop doing business with somebody that you don't trust, unless someone else is interfering. So my question is, why has the President of the Treasury Board not undertaken further audits into Keel Digital Solutions or all the other low-scoring proposals?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, you can't, on the one hand, say there's no process, and then on the other hand, point to actual audits done, forensic audits done, acting promptly on those forensic audits, Speaker. We have those processes in place for a reason, Speaker. And when that member talks about investing in programs, be clear to the members of OPFFA who are here today, we invest in their training. Ground survival training, Speaker. I visited them yesterday, and many members will have a chance to speak to them today. These are the government priorities we're advancing, Speaker. So let's be very clear when we're referencing these funds. All dollars go to training our professional firefighters, to training our men and women in the construction sectors. These are the priorities of government that we are advancing, Speaker, and we're proud to stand with those workers and invest in the incredible training that they do.
Leader of the third party.
Minister conveniently forgot to mention that the company that was under forensic audit is the company that he intervened on behalf of a low-scoring proposal because he was friends with the lobbyist. So I don't think I'd be crowing about accounting, right, and auditing if I were you. That's a big mistake, Minister. I'm not sure if it was a mistake.
Further, Speaker.
So $27 million to bars and nightclubs into downtown Toronto. $10 million to the owners of a strip club. Low-scoring proposals all went to an insider, a lobbyist friend, a donor, an endorser. Right? It doesn't make any sense. No one's protecting the taxpayer dollar over there, and I can see it in their faces, all of them. I can see it in their faces. How do you go and explain this to someone back in your constituency? So why won't the President of the Treasury Board take responsibility and get to the bottom of the rot that's the Skills Development Fund?
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, again, Speaker, you know, we're talking about programs that are investing in the people of Ontario, investing in those plans. When the pandemic hit and we needed a plan to support workers, it's this government that stepped up. After every successive round, we've made improvements to the program. We've had independent officers analyze this program. We've accepted those recommendations and are moving forward to strengthen that program. But when he stands up against these programs, Speaker, I support the independent audit, Speaker, not done by us, but by independent officers. He's standing against the men and women of our fire services who are getting trained thanks to the Skills Development Fund, the men and women in our construction sector, Speaker, in every corner of the province. Last night, they passed Bill 30 on voice vote. So on one hand, they stand here and complain. On the other hand, they quietly actually support this because they can't even name a single union they visited that don't support the Skills Development Fund and the incredible work we're doing to train a next generation of workers.
I recognize the leader of the third party.
Maybe the minister didn't hear the first time around. The company in the forensic audit is the one that he intervened on behalf of while they were under a forensic audit because his friend was the lobbyist. And also he was hanging around with the director of the company at a hockey game. So I'm not sure he should be standing up here and crowing about his record. Because how do you explain to people who are trying to put food on the table, right, who are trying to get clothes for their kids, pay the rent, how do you go back home and explain to them, I intervened to give $7 million on behalf to a company because my friend was a lobbyist, and I overrode the low-scoring proposals? How do you explain that to people? And how does the President of the Treasury Board not get to the bottom of the rot, the absolute total rot the Skills Development Fund is?
Because she's a part.
Government House Leader.
You know, again, Speaker, over and over and over again, the member asked the same question. The path was crystal clear by the government on this file. You have the routine audit that took place 2 years ago, which led to the ultimate forensic audit. And again, the minister, you know, I'm speaking today on behalf of the Minister of Colleges and Universities, Research, Excellence and Security, when within 24 hours of getting that forensic audit, the audit is passed along to the OPP under the investigation. The minister has said over and over and over again that all payments associated with this provider are currently under review, and further actions will be taken by our government based on the outcome. So we're not going to comment any further on the OPP investigation.
Response?
But let's face facts. The member is going to continue to ask the questions. The path forward has been brought to you many, many times.
Leader of the third party.
The House Leader's answer is like a day late and a dollar short. Well, actually, millions of dollars short. So there are 200,000 young people looking for work in this province, looking for a start. And this government has let the college system wither. Their college system, their opportunity, fired 10,000 workers. At the same time, shoveling tens of millions of dollars out the door to donors, insiders, friends, lobbyists, who has ever got a connection. So how does the President of the Treasury Board explain that to the young people that are in the gallery right now? Why their colleges are being allowed to wither while friends, insiders, lobbyists are all being taken care of? How does the President of the Treasury Board explain that?
Recognize the member for Whitby.
Well, thank you, Speaker. Speaker, funding for Ontario's publicly assisted colleges and universities has never been higher in our province's history. Under the leadership of Premier Ford, this government is making the strategic investments to ensure Ontario's institutions get students into rewarding careers that address the province's current and future labour market needs. Through Budget 2025, we announced nearly $1 billion in targeted investment to expand enrollment in critical labour market programs. Speaker, this is all new funding on top of the $1.3 billion investment in Ontario's post-secondary last year. And, Speaker, in addition to over $5 billion in operating funding we contribute annually so that Ontario institutions can continue to deliver for our students.
Back to the Leader of the third party.
$10 million to a strip club owner. Can you explain that to the students? Somebody over there, President of the Treasury Board? $27 million to bars and nightclubs. Can you explain that? Millions of dollars to law firm. The principal's a Conservative appointee. Millions and millions of dollars shoveled out the door to friends and donors and insiders. It's just gross. And while the college system withers and people lose opportunity, these guys are feathering their friends' nests. And it's wrong. And the President of the Treasury Board has a responsibility to look after the people's money, and she's not. So why is the President of the Treasury Board refusing to get to the bottom of the Skills Development Fund and the stinking, rotting mass that it is?
Back to the member for Whitby.
Speaker, we know our colleges and universities build Ontario's workforce for generations to come. That is why, in the last 19 months, we provided $2 billion in new funding to support our colleges and universities. Speaker, we're taking a comprehensive approach with the sector to strategically invest in critical areas that will benefit Ontario students and our economy. The people of Ontario elected us because they know it is this government who will make fiscally responsible decisions, and it is this government that will maintain Ontario's reputation of having a world-class post-secondary system while building the workforce our province needs to succeed.
Member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, women make up 75% of Ontario's community public service workforce, the very workers who hold up the care economy. But instead of investing in the jobs, in the services that women count on, after 8 years of Conservative government, funding for social services has fallen 16%, and the FOA says that the government's going to be short, get this, $7 billion just to maintain the basic services. Meanwhile, workers, mostly women, are paid so little that they are struggling to feed their own families even as they care for ours. So, Speaker, how can the Premier claim to support women's economic opportunity when his own cuts have pushed the care economy to the brink?
Recognize the Associate Minister for Women's Economic and Social Opportunities.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was elected in 2022. That's when we changed the name of the ministry from Women's Issues to Women's Social and Economic Opportunities, because we know the driving factor that contributes to violence against women is economic stability. It only took 4 years for the members opposite to realize this. So thank you, I guess. But Madam Speaker, this is why we contributed $1.4 billion to Ontario Stands, which is our strategy to address and end violence against women. And the last pillar that supports, anchors the strategy is promote economic security, Madam Speaker. This is why we've invested over $41 million in 58 organizations across the province to ensure that women have training and wraparound support so that they can complete their training and get jobs in the trades, in high-growth sectors, in any sector that they want to. Madam Speaker, we will do everything that we can.
Back to the member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Speaker. It seems that the FAO is telling this minister that she's been failing at her job. But, Speaker, women make up 96% of the childcare workforce. And childcare is that lifeline that allows mothers to work, to study, to rebuild their lives, especially those fleeing violence. Yet the fees are still $19 a day, the spaces are scarce, the sector is short 10,000 RECEs because wages are so low that the workers cannot stay. Speaker, will this government finally deliver affordable, accessible childcare with a real workforce strategy, or will it continue to hold back the very women that our economy depends on?
Recognize the Associate Minister.
Madam Speaker, you know it was our government that made sure that women or any worker who is in childcare can ladder up to make sure they become registered ECEs so they can earn higher paychecks and contribute even more to our society that we need. We know that women are important to our economy, which is why we are working hard to ensure our economy is strong. You cannot have a strong economy when you don't have healthy workers. And that's why we invest heavily to get women into the trades, like women that Sarah I met, who came from doing nothing to getting into our Women's Economic Security Program and is now a carpenter. And that was through a program in Burlington. It is programs like these that are making sure that women have opportunities, which is why we call our ministry Women's Social and Economic Opportunities. We will always work hard to ensure that Ontario is the best place for women to be able to get a job, earn an income, and take care of them.
Question. I recognize the member for Kanata-Carleton.
Thank you, Speaker. The Ontario Internal Audit Division, within the Treasury Board Secretariat, has the mandate to provide independent assurance, advisory, and forensic audit services aimed at evaluating and improving, among other things, whether the internal government controls over taxpayer money are working as intended. We've seen example after example of the Skills Development Fund of millions and millions of dollars given to low-scoring applicants, insiders, donors, strip club owners, and now a company undergoing a forensic audit. How does the President of the Treasury Board think the people of Ontario will interpret her refusal to stand in this House and explain the action or inaction of her department? How is it she is not worried that people will assume that her government...
I recognize the Government House Leader.
You know, Speaker, I can't understand. This is a very open and transparent process that's been outlined, many, many times in this House. The Minister has talked about the audits that take place routinely on government programs. He's also indicated in this House that, based on the Auditor General's recommendations, that we'll be implementing those recommendations. So, to continue to target one of the ministers that we've outlined very clearly in this House how this happened. Routine audit 2023 led to a forensic audit 24 hours after that audit was received on November the 5th. It was forwarded to the Ontario Provincial Police. Speaker, I don't know whether I've got to do instant answered and send it over to the members, but the process has been very, very clear. We'll continue to stand up and move those processes forward. The member can continue to try.
Member for Canada-Carleton.
Speaker, of course the question has to go to the President of the Treasury Board. Exactly. It is the responsibility of the President of the Treasury Board. Yep. And I'm puzzled why over the past few days she has specifically chosen not to answer these questions. We've seen the Minister of Labour try to defend his actions through misdirection, wild excuses, and I would say a certain pride in taking care of his friends with taxpayer money. Yep. Now, back to the President of the Treasury Board. How is it that she doesn't seem to care that people will either think that she is incompetent or that her government has something to hide?
Government House Leader.
Come on, Speaker. Come on. The President of the Treasury Board is one of the most accomplished ministers in our government, and I take great offence, through you, Speaker, to that member, that you even question her competency as a minister. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Let Bonnie Crombie stand up and speak. All right.
Order. Order. The member for Ajax will come to order. I'm going to start warning people. Continue. Order.
You know what's important for our government? The fact that we're facing unprecedented economic times. We need Ontario skilled workers to deliver on our $200 billion infrastructure program. We need skilled workers, through you, Speaker, for our unprecedented energy program. To highlight a process that we've answered numerous times, and then to defame one of our most competent members. Shame on the Liberal Party.
Question. I recognize. Order. I recognize the member for Wellington Halton House.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. Speaker, Ontario farmers feed our province and drive our economy. They put fresh food on our tables. They support towns and families across Ontario. They work long hours, face high costs, and deal with risks that most people never see. 2 weeks ago at the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, our government heard one message again and again. Farmers are worried about what is coming next. They see rising global pressure. They hear the threats Donald Trump keeps making. They know new tariffs or trade fights could hit their crops, their herds, their income, and their future. So, Speaker, can the minister explain how our government is protecting Ontario's agriculture sector from these growing economic threats.
Recognize the Minister of Agriculture.
Good morning, Speaker, and thank you to the hardworking member from Wellington Halton Hills. This gentleman knows where his food comes from. And he's right, Madam Speaker. Against the backdrop of our beautiful Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, I had the privilege of hosting thought leaders from academia, from agriculture, from farms, commodity groups, to distill and find ways to invest better and do more with innovation and research to benefit our farmers and food producers. Farmers do feed cities, but with farmers being concerned about tariffs, what I heard from those thought leaders were potential, limitless potential, and massive upsides. Just last month, I had the privilege of announcing $41 million in agriculture research and innovation for our farmers and food producers. So, Speaker, our government will continue to listen to and learn from our food producers to protect Ontario and protect Ontario's food supply.
Back to the member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his answer and his strong leadership. Speaker, our farmers are clear. They want stability, they want safe markets, and they want our government to continue to stand with them when outside forces put their work at risk. At the Royal Agriculture Winter Fair, our government spoke with growers, ranchers, and young farmers. They told us they were worried about economic threats from Donald Trump. They know that one tariff can wipe out a season. They know high trade fights can hurt small farmers the most. They want to see continued strong support and strong action by our government. So, Speaker, can the minister share how our government is helping farmers remain economically strong and competitive as these threats grow?
Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you again, Speaker, and thank you again for the question. Speaker, our two-way trade in food and agri-products between Canada and the U.S. is $45 billion. So U.S. tariffs threaten our farmers and American farmers. They threaten our consumers and American consumers. Speaker, both sides of the border, this is precisely why my colleague and former Minister of Agriculture announced $100 million to shore up our business risk management programs to $250 million annually. Whether it's through research, innovation, or shoring up our insurance programs, our government has the backs of farmers, even in turbulent times. Speaker, we'll always protect Ontario farmers. We'll always protect Ontario, and we know where our food comes from. Thank a farmer if you've ate today.
Recognize the member for Spadina Fort York.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Last week I was at a food bank and the lineup was around the block. 1 in 10 Ontarians is now reliant on a food bank. 1 in 3 are there because they lost their job. Bell Canada recently laid off 700 employees. This Conservative government cut 10,000 jobs from our public colleges, and Ontario's manufacturing jobs are at the lowest level since 1976. Shame. But instead of helping workers get jobs, this government has spent $2.3 billion taxpayer dollars on the Skills Development Fund, and they aren't even tracking whether there are any jobs being created at all. While Ontario workers are getting pink slips and lining up at food banks, why is this government spending $2.3 billion taxpayer dollars with no evidence that it's helping anyone but their donors?
Great question. Recognize the Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, that's simply incorrect. As I've said before, over 100,000 people finding employment within 60 days or less, Speaker. We've also integrated our centralized employment management service, tracking outcomes 6, 9, 12 months out, tracking SIN numbers so that we could track long-term employment. It's also not just employment, it's about retention as well. For example, the incredible training we're doing with firefighters, Speaker, to support health and safety, also drive a retention for first responders who are running into danger while we run from it, Speaker. It's also about breaking down barriers, as you heard from my caucus colleague earlier, about breaking down barriers for women entering employment, Speaker. The construction sector, this is a party that doesn't support construction, doesn't support the men and women in our union training halls that are landing better jobs, working on things like Highway 413, the Bradford Bypass. These are tangible projects that are putting men and women to work. 18,000 jobs for SMRs alone. Again, they don't support those things. These are putting men and women to work in our community.
Spadina Fort York.
The government uses words like opportunities, creating opportunities and retention. But if you don't have any data, then you have no evidence that you've gotten anything or Ontarians have benefited at all from the $2.3 billion taxpayer dollars in this slush fund. So Ontario has now the second highest unemployment rate of any province in Canada. And instead of creating jobs, this Premier gave $100 million taxpayer dollars to clients of the Premier's campaign manager. If this government is so confident that giving $100 million taxpayer dollars to the Premier's campaign manager creates real, permanent jobs, will they stop hiding the data and publish today the list of every funded project, every employer, and the number of actual full-time jobs created?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. Let's talk about real stats that this training is supporting. Again, a 33% increase in registered training agreements among cement workers. That member doesn't know what a registered training agreement is, so I'll explain it to him. That's when an employer signs on an apprentice. They're getting paid while they are learning, Speaker. Those are real jobs, real training opportunities, Speaker. A 25% increase in heat and frost insulators. A 64% increase in pressure system welders. A 14% increase in registered training agreements for network cabling specialists. In my community, we've delivered a $40 million project that's supporting driving fibre, connecting it to homes so that rural Ontario businesses, Speaker, can connect and drive sales for their business, Speaker. Guess what? It's men and women, network cabling specialists, among others, who help get that job done. They're signing registered training agreements thanks to training this government's investing in that's leading to real jobs, Speaker. Those are real stats, real jobs.
Question. I recognize the member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the Internal Audit Department for the government is in Treasury Board. Treasury Board is supposed to, quote, provide services that support prudent financial and risk management, transparency, accountability, and helps to ensure value for money in government spending. We know a routine audit of Keel Digital Solutions done by Treasury Board's internal audit function found irregularities in 2023. Speaker, in any well-run organization, the Executive Committee, here the Cabinet, would be informed the minute irregularities were found. Every minister, including the Labour Minister, should have been alerted. If they weren't, the Treasury Board failed in its duty. Through you, Speaker, to the President of the Treasury Board, when did she inform Cabinet of the irregularities uncovered during the Keel Digital Solutions routine audit?
Government House Leader.
Yeah, Speaker. I don't know how many times the government has to outline the process for the opposition. Obviously, they've got, they've got some track that they're on that no one understands but them. So let's talk about what's important, right? I outlined in a previous question to one of the third-party members the importance of skill training, and there's no better way to show that the Liberals have lost their way than to talk about the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association, Speaker, through you to the members that are here today. The minister earlier today talked about the great partnership that our government has in skills development with our firefighters. And I can remember a time when I was in this House in the early days when it was that party that worked closely with them. But that just shows you, Speaker, how far Liberals have lost their way when they vilify skilled trading contracts that we've done, when they vilify the President of the Treasury Board, and they continue.
Back to the member for Don Valley West.
Speaker, it's clear the Treasury Board President does not want to talk about the Skills Development Fund. Why? Because she cannot defend the indefensible. The Skills Development Fund, House of Cards, is about to come crashing down, and she doesn't want to be anywhere near it. Speaker, any experienced auditor would have done two things when irregularities showed up. They would make sure all taxpayer money to Keel Digital Solutions stopped flowing. That didn't happen. And they would audit every program the government has with Keel, including the $7.5 million they got from the Skills Development Fund. That's the only acceptable course of action.
My question to the President of the Treasury Board, will she commit to auditing every dollar of taxpayer money that this government gave to Keel Digital Solutions and telling the people of Ontario if they really got value for money?
Government House Leader.
Again, Speaker, the third party is, through you, Speaker, is, fixated on the President of the Treasury Board. And you know why? You know what? It's because the Minister of Colleges, Universities, Research Excellence and Security has consistently answered their questions. The Minister has stood in his place and answered when the audit took place, when the forensic audit was returned, and when he referred the audit to the Ontario Provincial Police. Both ministers have indicated in this House what has happened with the applicants' funds since then. It has been crystal clear to everyone in this House but the third party on the path forward. And I just find it very interesting on a day when I'm accepting questions for the Minister of Colleges and Universities that all of a sudden every question is dealing with the President of the Treasury Board. We've answered the questions asked and answered.
Question. I recognize the member for Oxford.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Red Tape Reduction. With growing tariff threats from Donald Trump and the global uncertainty affecting our supply.
I apologize to the member. I recognize the member. My fault. I recognize the member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Premier. We have witnessed this government condone the expropriation and development of farmland over the past few years. If this is a government best practice, then I suggest we keep it in the ag family and begin investing in ag food processing. $670 million to a Norwegian company, $424 million to Umicore. The Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates total provincial contributions for EV projects in Canada to be about $21.1 billion, most of that coming right here from Ontario. Yesterday, Stellantis, a company this government upholds with immense amounts of taxpayer dollars, couldn't even be bothered to show up and meet with MPs. You know who always shows up? Our farmers, our ag organizations. And talking about a $100 million boost to RMP 2 days before this provincial election in 2025 is absolutely rich when farmers had been begging for that support for years. Speaker, when will the Premier protect and tariff-proof Ontario by strengthening local food systems through farmland protection and increased domestic processing?
Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you again, Speaker. Thank you for the question about protecting farmers, protecting food supply systems, and protecting farmland, because last evening, a member may not know that I stood proudly in front of over 700 delegates from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, highlighting the fact that 1 in 9 jobs, mine included, are in food and food care. We talked about soil health. We talked about the balanced approach this government is taking for protecting land. So now, just outside the GTA, but all of Ontario, has an agriculture impact assessment done when there's any land use change whatsoever. So we're protecting farmers, food systems, investing, like I just mentioned earlier, $41 million in research and innovation to make sure Canada remains and Ontario remains the leader in global food production.
Beautiful answer. Back to the member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Thank you, Speaker. As a farm girl, I appreciate a good word salad. R&D funding is an essential part of our agri-food sector, but is not food processing, no matter how you try to spin it. Look south of the border, where Ontario's investments pale in comparison to those being made in several states. Our neighbours have prioritized strengthening food systems across every segment of the food supply chain, from farm to fork. And yes, there is significant support from the Fed. So I say to the minister opposite, it's time to multitask and lean on the federal government, but also take the time to take the lead and set the example right here in Ontario. Because agriculture is not subject to the boom and bust that other industries are subjected to, doesn't mean it should be an afterthought. And I'll remind members, no mention of this in the fall economic statement, and I'm hoping things will change at budget time. Speaker, to the Premier, once again, will this government develop a long-term strategy for ag food processing in Ontario?
Back to the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you again, Speaker. we've made record investments, and maybe $100 million is trifling to the member opposite, but $100 million came from the very people who inform us. So farm girls, farm boys, professional farmers, researchers came together to inform this Premier who picks up his phone when he's answered, and this minister who picks up his phone when called upon, to listen to the people that inform us. Those investments aren't trifling. Those investments are real. Provincial policy statements with land use planning, they're real things too. We're taking farmers' input, researchers' input into consideration, developing good policy, making strategic investments in research and innovation. I invite the member opposite to check out Agriculture Research and Innovation Ontario to find out all the good things we're doing to make sure we grow all the good things that continue to grow in Ontario.
Now I can recognize the member for Oxford.
Much, Madam Speaker. I'll try again. My question is to the Minister of Red Tape Reduction. With growing tariff threats from Donald Trump and global uncertainty affecting our supply chains, people want to know their governments are working on their behalf now, not later. Ontario families and businesses want stability, faster services, and a system that supports growth instead of slowing it down. Speaker, that's exactly why cutting red tape matters. It keeps costs down, removes delays, and gives businesses the certainty they need during unpredictable times. Our government must continue to take decisive action and protect Ontarians' competitive advantage by removing regulatory burden. Speaker, can the minister explain how our government's work to reduce red tape is protecting Ontarians' position in time of rising economic pressure?
Minister of Red Tape Reduction.
Well, thank you, Speaker. Thank you. And like many people in our government, I would not be here without the great constituents of Barrie Innisfil that I represent. And today in the gallery, I am pleased to welcome Mike Arnold and Steve Bly from the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association, who serve so bravely for our local community. And it's the local community that inspires me every day to reduce and cut red tape with my colleagues here in our government. It's farmers who I represent in my riding of Barrie Innisfil. You know, when I drive home after serving here in this legislature, I pass farms like Hordinsky Farms, where we can get our local onions, ETF Farms, where I can get local produce, and also Tony's Produce. I can go past Innisfil Creek Honey and get some honey just on 10th Side Road. Speaker, this is the lifeblood of our communities. But for far too long, our farmers were mired in red tape.
Response?
This is why we reduced red tape by digitalizing the agricultural licensing process, saving those farmers over 1,200 hours every year, Speaker, and we're not going to stop so that the farmers can do their great work.
Member for Oxford.
Much, Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the response. Speaker, people remember what it was like before 2018. Slow services, endless delays, and rules that block progress instead of supporting it. Business struggled and workers paid the price. Today, we're taking a different approach. We're making government work better for people and smarter for business. We're clearing outdated barriers. We're helping people get ahead, especially now, with economic risks like U.S. tariffs putting pressure on jobs and industries. Speaker, can the minister share how our red tape reduction work is protecting workers, supporting families, and helping Ontario stay competitive in this environment?
Minister of Red Tape Reduction.
Thank you, Speaker. And again, as a team approach, we're putting people before paperwork so farmers can spend more time on their crops, feeding our cities, supporting our farmers markets. And again, it's this government that's saving them 1,200 hours every year in burden, something that the opposition did not support. That's time farmers can spend growing their crops and driving our economy, especially when we're talking about protecting Ontario's food supply chain. Speaker, we're strengthening our economy, we're making the investments, and under the previous governments, farmers were stuck in red tape. They were being taxed. We inherited a system that punished ambition instead of replacing it with rewarding ambition, Speaker. It's under our government that we're changing the rules that inherited lots of red tape from the opposition, and we're putting our people first. We're building the province of tomorrow, we're growing the province of Ontario, and we're going to support our farmers and workers every step of the way.
I recognize the member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. A recent poll in Niagara found that 9 out of 10 residents are worried about the next generation's ability to buy a home. 70% of renters in Niagara have given up hope of being able to afford a home. This year had the lowest number of housing starts in Ontario since 2009. In Niagara, wait lists for affordable housing are up to 21 years. Yet the Premier attacked renters through Bill 60 instead of addressing the crisis. When will the Premier act on the housing affordability crisis, pass real rent control, and get government back in the business of building affordable housing for our young people?
Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, thank you for the question, Speaker. The one bright light in the housing continuum, and we know we have a housing crisis in this province, is rental starts, Speaker. 17,000 new starts this year, up over last year, 51,000 new starts in the last 3 years, Speaker. And I want to point out, protections for renters are there before Bill 60, there after Bill 60. Why? We doubled the adjudicators from 40 to 80. We added $25 million to the administration of the Landlord-Tenant Board to ensure that we had fast process. And we've reduced the backlog by 80%, Speaker, and we've got great policies in place to protect our renters. Speaker, there is a housing crisis, and it's taking too long and costing too much to get housing built. That is why, through Bill 17 and Bill 60, we're creating the conditions to get more homes built faster and better.
Back to the member for Niagara Falls.
Back to the Premier. I'll just repeat this line. This year is the lowest number of housing starts in the province of Ontario since 2009. Back to the Premier. The same poll in Niagara found that 3 out of 4 residents are frustrated with the lack of progress on affordability. The demand for food banks has never been higher. Project Share in Niagara Falls serves 1 in 7 of Niagara's residents. Think about that. 1 in 7 people need a food bank just to get by in the province of Ontario. The Premier has been in charge for nearly 8 years, and the affordability crisis has gotten much worse. When will the Premier commit today to finally taking on price gouging by corporate grocery chains? Thank you.
I recognize the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, Speaker, I think we all know that there's a housing crisis in this province. We don't need to be told that. We're creating the conditions to make it change, Speaker. And when it comes to grocery prices, I will echo the words of our Minister of Agriculture that we are doing everything we can in our power, again, to create the environment to get more food processing put in place in this process, protect our farmers, and get prices down. Speaker, when it comes to affordability, what we are doing in this province is creating the conditions. We don't build the housing. We understand we need more built. Why? Because we've got higher development charges, because taxes are too high. We don't build the houses, builders do. Municipalities need to lower the cost, lower the time it takes to get housing built. We're going to get that job done, Speaker. We're seeing good progress. In the rental market alone, as he points out, 17,000 new starts over last year, up 38%. We're on the right path. It's a difficult path. We will prevail. Thank you, Speaker.
Recognize the member for Don Valley North.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services. Speaker, while this government continues to shovel out the cash to the SDF to friends and families, this government also continues to starve developmental services in Ontario. Central West Specialized Development Services recently forced adults with developmental disabilities out of their group homes and into a single Oakville facility without their consent. Since then, families report a rapid decline in care, and they say their loved ones' safety and well-being are now at serious risk. Disability rights advocates have called it unconscionable, and families have received almost no information from management or the board. Yet the government says it won't get involved. Speaker, this government funds this agency. It sets its quality standards. How can they justify staying out of this when vulnerable adults are moved without their consent and put at risk?
I recognize the Minister of Children and Community and Social Services.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the important question. Speaker, our government believes that every Ontarian with developmental disabilities deserves to live with dignity, with respect, in a setting that supports their individual needs. Now, Madam Speaker, while my honourable colleague knows that collective bargaining is between the employer and the union, and as government, of course, we urge both parties to reach a deal to be able to provide those supports as quickly as possible. That is what our message is to both parties, Madam Speaker. But when it comes to the developmental services sector, we have invested this year alone $3.7 billion in the sector, Madam Speaker. To put that in perspective, that is more than $1.4 billion since we formed government in 2018, Madam Speaker. Supportive housing has increased $2.4 billion in supportive housing, an increase of 7.
I recognize the member for Don Valley North.
Speaker, the minister's answer was about process. This is a question about people. In the gallery this morning is Shannon Bideau, whose brother Chris was moved to the Oakville facility without his consent. He is now living in a converted storage closet.
Shame.
Speaker, Shannon has reached out to the minister's office on October 27th and has not even received a reply. So let me read the House a passage from Shannon's letter. To watch this happen as a sister is devastating. To go from his true bedroom and his true home to a windowless room with nothing but a cardboard box by his bed is a denial of his humanity. I am fearful he is starting to internalize the message. And I'm fearful that he will wonder if maybe he is of lesser worth and doesn't deserve better than this. So, Speaker, I will ask the minister for three things. 1, will you order an urgent compliance inspection of CWSDS? 2, report the inspection findings and corrective actions to the families. 3, convene talks with the employers and the union so Ontarians with disabilities are not used as a pawn in a labour dispute.
Recognize the minister.
Madam Speaker, as a government and certainly as a minister, I require every agency to have strong contingency in place to make sure every individual that is receiving services and supports through our organization receives the best care possible. And when I mentioned, Madam Speaker, we have invested more than $3.7 billion in the sector to make sure that they receive those quality services, Madam Speaker. It wasn't long ago, Madam Speaker, under the previous government, the Liberal government that the member are part of, that they failed the people of this province.
Member for Ajax will come to order.
Families were languishing on wait lists, Madam Speaker, had no access to any support. It was our government that stepped in and said, time for talk is over. Now it's time for action. It's why we hold providers accountable. It's why we put families first. It's why we put individuals first, Madam Speaker. I won't take any lessons from the Liberals, certainly when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable. I'll make sure that they can.
The Leader of the Third Party will come to order. I will start warning people. I recognize the Government House Leader on a point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to wish my seatmate, the Minister of Energy and Mines, a very happy birthday.
Pursuant to Standing Order 36A, the member for Ottawa South has given a notice of dissatisfaction with the answer to the question given by the parliamentary assistant to the Premier regarding Skills Development Fund. This matter will be debated today following private members' public business.